most common questions I get asked as an Enneagram teacher is, how did I get to be my type? How did I develop this identity? And when somebody asks me that, I think of when I used to be a first grade teacher when I first got out of college, where I learned a boatload about human behavior, watching 6-year-olds interact with their parents, with their teachers, and with each other. And I could see them modeling their behavior after their parents, modeling their behavior after me, someone doing something and them kind of shape-shifting to try to connect in some way or impress somebody in some way or feel safe in some way, feel some sense of control. It wasn't a conscious choice. It's what kids do. It's called mirroring. You might call it imitating, but it's a survival technique, and we don't know it's a survival technique when we're in the middle of it. So they internalize these behaviors and develop what's called an identity. That is, there's a way they automatically act, and it becomes, who I am. And I could see this happen. So say if a parent valued success, for instance, then the child might go on, really go on about their spelling test to their parents, work really, really hard, be a star, and look to mom for a reaction. If they valued strength and athleticism, the child, really works to become a really great athlete. And they get kudos from doing these things for their parents, for their teachers. They might get kudos for being independent if the family values independence. But you also see kids who were hardwired really differently from the rest of their family. And they do something called counter-identification. It's like, okay, I can't be like them, so I'm going to be different. I'm going to be not like them. You're still attached to what your parents think, and you're still attached to what your teachers expect out of you, but you're opposing them in some way. So I'll just be really good at being a mediocre student because I know I'm never going to be like my older sister who gets straight A's. So we internalize qualities of significant people, and we take on what's called an identity. And you've probably heard that before. We build an entire identity based on who we were or weren't in our family of origin. So given your natural disposition and your family environment and your culture, you develop your Enneagram style. That's how it starts working. You don't know you're doing this, but you're developing what's called an idealized self to help you survive. So if you're a 1, for instance, you get hits for being good. So you push any natural desires aside, which are deemed bad, and you develop an identity which shores up this kind of false belief that you can always be good. And so what gets pushed to shadow and what's pushed aside are the desires that feel like they would be judged by the family, the culture, your boss as you get older, for, that are not good. And if you're a 2, don't people like someone who's running around helping them and giving them advice? And the only thing is, meanwhile, your needs get repressed. And you wonder as you get older why you're maybe having health problems, or you wonder why people aren't always taking your advice, or not appreciating you, or not connecting to you the way you want to be connected to. And you start feeling resentful that others aren't appreciating you. But what's getting pushed to shadow is your own needs. So part of your false identity has to do with that I don't have needs. And you develop this kind of idealized self. And that's how the false self system or this identity is built. And I shouldn't even call it a false self system. I really am not a fan of the term because there's kind of a judgment implied. I mean, geez, it's not an easy world. And we need some sort of type to help us survive. So, I think it's it's conditioned. It's conditioned on our holding environments. You can call it a conditioned self. But meanwhile, underneath, there's some sort of authentic self that's waiting to be birthed. And what I found is as people start to work with understanding their type, they start to be able to see, oh, okay, this is just a habit. If I'm a 3, I'm creating this identity of being a winner. I kind of lose this sense of my own authentic self. This is a habit. And I'm just competing all the time. And what about me? It feels good when you're young, but there starts to get to be a point where will people like me if I'm not winning at everything, if I'm not making a lot of money, if I don't have the best house, well, do they really know who I am? Does it matter to them? If you're a 4, it makes perfect sense as a kid to be unlike everybody else so that you're unique and special and attention is drawn to you in some way by people you care about. But, kind of your own ordinariness gets pushed to shadow. That what if you're ordinary? Are you going to die if you're not like everybody else? So it gets really tricky, in these lifetime transitions, whether you're a parent and you have a kid who's nothing like you work for a boss who thinks being nice is a liability, say if you're a 2, Or you move to a new city, you make new friends, you change college, nobody knows who you are. And suddenly this identity starts to become an albatross around your neck. And that's when the real work really starts to begin, when you can start to observe that and begin to let it go.